Hey, I'm Jason Troutman.
I'm Meredith Bozentka, and we watched the movie Passengers. So in the movie, Jim is the main character, and he wakes up from his hibernation pod due to the spaceship malfunctioning. After a year of being alone, he lacks human connection and communication and decides to wake up Aurora. At first, he pretends her hibernation pod had a malfunction too, but later she finds out the truth, which ruins their emotional and romantic connection they built. Later, they have to fix the spaceship, which leads to them rebuilding their relationship again.
In Passengers, the audience is introduced to an intimate and interpersonal relationship between Jim Preston and Aurora Lane. The relationship then experiences growth through various stages, as seen on the first date, where we are introduced to the concept of snap judgments in the bar when there's a disconnect between verbal and nonverbal communication, and in Aurora's response to the perception of the truth.
During one of the scenes, we see snap judgments and stereotyping taking place. Jim and Aurora play a game where they guess what occupation a sleeping passenger has based solely on their looks. Aurora looks at an elderly white male and says he's a banker, but Jim reveals that he's actually a gardener. She is stereotyping based on the male's outward appearance of being white and elderly. On page 124 on Interplay, she uses these three characteristics while stereotyping by categorizing others on the basis of easily recognized but not necessarily significant characteristics, ascribing a set of characteristics to most or all members of a group, and applying the generalization to a particular person. Aurora was effective for snap judgments, but ineffective for first impressions in this scenario. And there were no consequences from her stereotyping the male because it was just the two of them, and so no one could really see and be outwardly offended by her judgments.
Their relationship changes dynamic when there is a miscommunication between verbal and nonverbal communication. When Aurora and Jim are at the bar, Arthur asks if Aurora knows the whole truth. Her and Jim both agree that she does, a form of direct verbal communication, but Jim gives a look to Arthur to indicate that the secret between the two of them is very much still a secret, and is a form of nonverbal communication. In the textbook on page 176, it says, most nonverbal communication has the potential to be even more ambiguous than verbal statements, which can be seen in this scene. This form of nonverbal communication between Jim and Arthur proved to be ineffective, as can be seen from the consequences that followed. Jim proceeded to go to the restroom, thinking that his secret was safe and secure with Arthur, but Arthur then mentions it to Aurora. The consequences escalated beyond what was shown through because of this slip-up, which led to a relationship that was built on dishonesty and selfishness.
Later on in the scene, we see Aurora does not react well when she finds out the truth, that Jim woke her up on purpose. She screamed and cried and then ran away from Jim and said she did not want to speak to him again. The first order reality of the scene is that Aurora woke up. The second order reality for Jim is that he was lonely and wanted to share a connection with someone, so he woke her up. Aurora's second order reality is that her hibernation pod had a malfunction, and that's why she woke up.
In retrospect, Aurora should have used the perception checking process as explained on page 129 in the textbook. She should have given a description of the behavior she noticed. You opened my pod early. Then she should have given two interpretations of the behavior. You are selfish and killed me, or you are in love with me. But there could be a lot of options for that one. Followed by a request for clarification about how to interpret the behavior. Why did you do it? But instead, she reacted very differently, but one that was very much expected and deserved. She was ultimately going to die, and her reaction was ineffective, or her reaction was effective for getting her point across of how angry she was. But it was ineffective for the perception checking process that we have learned in class because she did not ask for or listen to his explanation. Because of the way things went, their relationship suffered tremendously, and though the movie showed their relationship being repaired, there will always be that hint of distrust and selfishness mentioned before. In conclusion, Passengers shows us that interpersonal relationships go through various stages of perception, which are influenced by verbal and nonverbal communication and snap judgments, just to name a few. Thanks.
Thank you.